Closed captions are in English and Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. Go to ibr.news/captions. Next slide. Reminders, we encourage EAG members to turn on your video. Please say your name when you begin to speak. And if you experience technical difficulties, please contact program staff at 360-329-6744. EAG Public Comment. So there will be an opportunity to provide brief public input to EAG later in the meeting today. To submit input after the meeting, email comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. Next. So for our agenda, we'll start with introductions, move to our program update. We'll be discussing performance measures, formerly KPIs, key performance indicators, update and discussion. We'll have presentation and feedback on CBAG recommendations for equity objective, mobility and accessibility. Then we will have public comment and closing. So for our introductions, name, pronouns, and affiliation. Icebreaker, what have you changed your mind about in the past 6 months? Who would like to start? Meg. Oh, Nikki.
I'll toss it today. I'll toss it today. So my name is Nikki Chen, and I go by she, her. I'm affiliated with the City of Vancouver. I'm the business partner for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And I changed my mind in the last 6 months about what it would be like to live abroad. Meg.
I don't know if that's a good wanted to live abroad or a bad live abroad. I don't know. Hi, I'm Meg Johnson. I use she, her pronouns. I am here as a private citizen of Clark County, but also happen to work with Nikki at the City of Vancouver in the special events and parks and recreation team and cultural services with the city. I've changed my mind about electric cars. I think electric cars are here to save the car industry and not mankind as they're kind of billed as being. That's a new thing for me. Let's see. Pat, let's throw it to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat Daniels. I use she, her pronouns. And something that I've changed my mind about in the last week, there's been so many. I was like, I have to pick one. So I'm going to say replacing my car. My car's paid off, but I was thinking I need a retirement car. And I think it's paid off. I'm not going to. So I'm going to go with, okay. You're laughing too hard. Is that Con? I can't see you. I can't read the names. Urko.
Oh, Soko.
Soko. Okay.
Hi, it's Soko. Use pronouns. I'm the director of Pacific Islander Asian Family Center, part of our immigrant refugee community organization, URFO, and I'm on the EAG. Let's see here. I was gonna also say something about my car too, mainly because I got a really old truck, but that's neither here nor there. One thing I have changed my mind about are tunnels, not related to, as Mr. Johnson has illuminated many times, no more tunnels. But I think a tunnel for some public transportation would be really nice in Portland right about now.
Hmm.
I will pass it to Sabrina.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sabrina Owens-Wilson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Director at Metro, and I'm having a really hard time thinking of something I changed my mind about, and now I'm like overthinking. Am I stubborn? How stubborn am I? So I think I specialize more in the overthinking than the changing of the mind. Um, Nothing is coming to mind. So I'm going to pass it to Vicky.
Vicky Nakashima, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a member of the Community Benefits Committee, and I'm retired and lived in East Vancouver. Last Thursday, I was stuck on I-205 trying to get back from Lake Oswego at 4 o'clock. It took me 3 hours to get home. And while sitting there, I thought, you know, I kind of felt like I was waiting for this bridge so traffic wouldn't be so bad. But I can't wait that long. So I am convinced now that we really need to think to educate people about how this is a collaborative effort between the two states, and that it's not that we're two different states, but that we're working together to make this work. And to also look creatively about what we can do in the interim to make it easier to be a region instead of two separate entities. And there's so many things that are going on now, like the number of people who are leaving Portland, the number of people in Vancouver and Southwest Washington who don't want to shop in Portland because they don't want to go the trouble of driving there or getting there. So I just think there's some opportunities there. Although sitting in traffic, I was not very happy. So I'm going to pick who hasn't gone. Lucy? How about Lucy?
Oh, thank you. My name is Lucy Hamer. I use she, her pronouns. I'm on the equity team here to support the EAG. All of your answers have been wonderful and thoughtful and infrastructure related, and mine is just, I'm beginning to come around to audiobooks. Like I might be open to listening to audiobooks. I'm not fully there yet, but I've started the journey. And I will pass to Aiden. Have we heard from you?
You have not, and apologies for being off camera. I am having some computer difficulties with Zoom for some reason today. But I am here. My name is Aiden Gronauer. I am the Assistant Director of Civil Rights and Equity for the program. They, them, or he, him pronouns, something I have changed my mind about. I'm gonna maybe very similar to Nikki, change my mind a little bit about, how soon I might want to figure out working overseas.
How about you, Greg? What? Oh, hey.
I was going to pass it, but you go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, I'll go. Roberta Suzette, she, her. And I think it's occurred to me that like so much of my life is about running children around. And it's occurred to me that they don't need to do as much as I have them doing because I don't need to be doing all that. So I'm trying to think about what I can parse off and not do in terms of shuttling children. How about you, Greg Johnson?
Good, good evening, everybody. Greg Johnson, IBR Program Administrator, he, him. And something I've changed my mind about, I used to consider the possibility of buying a Tesla. And now I will never buy a Tesla, ever. So, changed my mind.
All right. All right. Emily.
Everyone, apologies for being off camera. I'm over here on Texas time, so I'm trying to get some dinner in really fast. But I'm Emily Thomas Peralta. I use she, her, aya pronouns. I'm with the IBR equity team and on the community benefits team as well. And man, I was feeling like you, Sabrina. I was having a hard time thinking of something, and I was definitely overthinking it. And then a real light, easy answer came to me, which was I've never been a fan of coleslaw. It's just not really my thing. But I recently found this place that has hot chicken, and they have like hot chicken sandwiches with this coleslaw on it. And I was real skeptical of it because it's not my thing. I almost wiped it off, but I tried it and it was really good. So I've come around, changed my mind.
Great. How about you, Chandra?
I'm Chandra, DEI and org development from CTRAN, and I'm sorry, I don't know what today's prompt is.
Oh, so name, affiliation, and something you've changed your mind about in the last 6 months.
Ooh. Fiction writing. Haven't been a fan until now. Not sure that I'm a fan, but thinking about it.
All right, all right. I'll take it. I'll take it. All right. John Gardner, what you got?
All right, good evening. John Gardner, Chief Equity Officer for TriMet, he, him. Apologies, I caught a bug. I was just traveling. Aiden, you'd be proud. Let's see, what have I changed my mind about? I like Greg's answer. I like a lot of the answers. I'd say Caesar salad or blue cheese. I think mostly what I've changed my mind in the last 2 weeks is everything's going to be all right. That's what I'll say.
Cool. All right. Shannon Singleton, what have you changed your mind about in the last 6 months?
Hello, all. Shannon Singleton. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm with the IBR equity team. I would say, gosh, I think, Roberta, I'm going to go with you, Dr. Hunt, with like the thinking I need to do all the things. I'm in the middle of transitioning out of my current role and trying to hold that plus the new stuff plus some other stuff, and just realized today that I have 7 calendars and maybe I just need to not actually try to do so much.
That's very wise. I'm glad you're preserving yourself before you transition. All right, Fabiola.
Thank you. I love the answers and I love this prompt. Let's see. For me, I'm Fabiola. I use they and she pronouns. I am here to support the EAG as part of the equity team with IBR. And something I changed my mind about, it actually surprised me, is that I don't need coffee. And so and it's been since I had my son and he's about to be 11, I really relied on coffee and I didn't trust my system to survive without it. I've been trying it out and using or drinking tea instead. And it's been, yeah, I think my mind and my body are convinced that I don't need coffee, which is something new for me.
Good job. Good job. All right. So I think that is everyone. I think that's everyone. So we're going to go to program update with Program Administrator Greg Johnson.
All right, I think we have a couple slides. So this last Friday, the bi-state tolling subcommittee met and they considered or are planning to study both exemptions for tribal members as well as low-income tolling. So that was the thrust of their meeting. They met the month before in our office and laid out the 4 potential scenarios for tolling and rates. So that is moving ahead. I urge people who have concerns about tolling to tune into those subcommittee meetings and make your voice heard. The draft supplemental document. So today is day 90, or not day 90, day 60 rather, and which means this is the last day for public comment on the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. So if you want to comment, you have until 11:59 and 59 seconds to get your comments in. So far, we have over 2,300 comments that have come in, and we are bound to answer each and every one of those. So our team will be extremely busy. Those answers to the comments will appear in the final supplemental document, which we hope will be published sometime next fall. So we've had virtual public hearings, we've had in-person hearings, and I said a lot of energy around getting this thing done. So also at the same time, we've had our Section 106 public comment period. And for those of you who are not familiar, Section 106 looks at cultural and archaeological resources in the region. And so that public comment period also ends tonight. So we are making sure that folks have an opportunity to weigh in on both of those weighty topics. That public comment period has been open for 30 days. We are still doing community events and tabling. So we just completed our last appearance at the Vancouver Farmers Market. If we can go to the next slide, you can see some of the other presentations that we've been doing. The team has been extremely busy during the public comment period. I'm not going to read off all of those things, but needless to say, we are trying to make sure that no one can say, boy, what is this project? Never heard of it. So we are still, even after public comment, we will make ourselves available to do presentations and appear at events to make sure folks understand what this program is and to fight some of the misinformation that is out there. So once again, we've been talking to neighborhood associations. We've been on Hayden Island talking to the folks at Hayden Island and making sure that the folks who are basically sit at the eye of the storm, make sure they have all their questions answered as we are moving forward. So let's go to the next slide. And so before we go to the next slide, I will take any questions or concerns that that this group may have. Once again, the team is going into the period where we're going to be generating the final supplemental document. So you're going to hear intermittent reports of how that is going forward. And while I'm at it, I want to thank the folks on this committee. We are coming on, it was exactly 4 years ago that we started reaching out to folks to become members of the Equity Advisory Group. Some of you have been with us that entire 4-year time period, and just want to say how much we appreciate you, and this program would not be where it's at without your participation and your input. So just want to thank everybody, and we will continue on with the mission. So I'll take any questions or concerns that anyone may have.
Meg.
Thank you. This is Meg. Greg, I know that we have well, not one day, but some time left on the comment period for today. How does 2,300 approximate responses compare to other comparable projects in terms of this first kind of initial release of information to folks?
So we actually were anticipating a lot more for programs of this size across the country. You will see generally between 5,000 and 10,000 comments. So it says to me two things: that we have done a great job of getting out in the community and answering questions that folks may have had early on, and it's taken away some of the mystery of a program like this. But yeah, we still anticipate getting a last minute rush of comments. So we think we'll probably end up being over 3,000. But yeah, I think the team, the outreach team has been out in the community talking to folks. We've been doing a presentation. So I think that's a reason why you see not that many comments.
Any other comments or questions? All right, Greg, do you want to continue?
I think the next slide is not mine, but.
Yep, I got the next section here. So that was, are you ready to move on?
Yeah, I think we are. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. All right, I'll pull up this slide and just give some intro that, Dr. Hunt, can you see the slide up?
I can. Equity performance measures, formerly KPIs,
Perfect.
with Fabiola.
Awesome. Well, we have plenty of time to go through this content, not being rushed. I know last month we try to make use of the time and put out a lot of information. So the nice thing about the meeting tonight is that we have this topic and then we have one more topic. So I won't rush through the content, and we'll leave plenty of space for folks to ask questions, or and we have some discussion prompts later on. Just to introduce the topic. So in last fall, there had been some work to develop key performance indicators. So in the parentheses, what was called KPIs, renamed to equity performance measures. And in the presentation, I have a slide that speaks to that a bit, but just want to make sure that folks are clear that these are referring to the equity performance measures that you all had worked on previously. So why develop performance measures? A couple key reasons. This may look familiar to some folks. This is taken from a presentation that was given earlier this year. The purpose is to track progress towards our equity objectives. These measures are closely connected and reflected in the equity framework that the EAG was also a key part in helping develop. So the performance measures are a more tangible way to track progress towards those equity objectives. They support program accountability and asking the question, what are we getting for this significant public investment? And lastly, they help determine where the program can make a difference in advancing equity and where there might be some gaps. So even in this iterative process, as we brainstorm the measures, we refine them, and we continue to have these conversations around what they should be, the process of developing them helps us make that determination of, and the data that we collect will help elevate some important considerations related to equity and this project. A recap of the process of developing them. They came, you all, the EAG had a discussion, a brainstorming discussion to start the process off. Simultaneously and kind of closely around that time, there was some peer research including looking at the I-5 Rose Quarter project and what some measures that were being used there. Then the measures went through 2 rounds of EAG refinement. Over the summertime this year, they were submitted to IBR leadership through a formal letter on behalf of the EAG. They were presented to leadership for consideration. Then later this last summer, they were workshopped by IBR staff. We looked at each measure line by line and provided input that helped further refine them. And now we're here today to show you what came out of that, the work that the IBR staff put into what was submitted. Some key updates that I want to highlight before we look at each section. Generally, the first point here, we went from naming them from key performance indicators to performance measures, really for some technical reasons that I don't know how interested folks are in getting into the technical pieces around the differentiating between key performance indicators and performance measures. But performance measures are really best suited for evaluation of a program and outcomes of a program. And so in terms of the type of data that we wanted to collect connected to these outcomes, it was just a better fit to describe what they are, what it is that we're putting forward as measurements for success and an evaluation of equity outcomes. They more accurately align with we added there is a timeline column that was workshopped. Some of the changes you'll see are in that timeline column. So when the IBR staff looked at the measures and thinking through, what would make most sense as far as when the data would be collected, there were some small adjustments to the timeline, to where they were identified to be best suited in the timeline. Once I should go through the performance measure, that one will make more sense. We removed some measures connected to work developing in other areas of the program. And in the slides, I'll indicate where measures were removed. And the reason that they were removed is because there's ongoing work in other parts of the program. And we wanted to make sure that we are, as we're coordinated with the work that is ongoing, we wanted to make sure that that there wasn't duplication and that we will be considering work that is being developed and will be tracked in other ways. And again, once we get to those slides, we can give some more context around why they were removed. And then lastly, there were potential data sources that were added to the columns so that we can get as specific as possible around where we would be getting this information that's connected to the performance measure. So I'll go into the columns so that some of these kind of will make more sense as we go through it. We'll pose the discussion questions so you can keep these in mind as we go through the measures, and then we'll have a slide at the end of this that will bring these back up. So just for you to keep these in mind. We're looking for your initial reactions to the updates. We want to know from your perspective, would the data sources that are identified yield meaningful measures? We're seeking your opinion on what additional data sources you might recommend the program team consider. And we'll make note of those and we'll bring them back as we continue to build these out. And then just generally any other questions or comments. Okay, here's where some of those updates will make more sense. So you'll see we're going section by section. The light blue on this slide is the is the equity objective that it's connected to. So this one's for the bucket of mobility and accessibility. The first column is performance measures. The second timeline column is indicates the timeline for measurement, and the last column that was added was the data sources for tracking. On the screen, you'll see some red text, and that's where changes were made to what was submitted in the summer. So here, I'll just go line by line. I know, it's been a little while since we visited these, and so if there are any questions or comments that come up as we go through each line, feel free to raise your hand. So the first one is to measure the increase in number of jobs accessible via transit for equity priority communities. And this one we update the timeline for measurement to the construction phase, and suggesting that a good data source for tracking would be TriMet on-board surveys. The second measure is increase in number of jobs accessible by driving for equity priority communities. This one would happen during the planning and design phase, and the data source is we'll need to do some more work to identify the data source for that one. The next one is the number of new marked pedestrian crossings, again during planning and design, and this one would be tracked through the program design. The next one is accessible sidewalks, newly constructed or improved during the planning and design phase, and still identifying the tracking source for this one. And the last measurement in here is a multi-use pathway constructed and connected, and the "and connected" was added during the planning and design phase, and this would be tracked through program design. There's a lot on this slide, so I'm going to see if there's any reactions or questions to what's on here.
I have a question about number 2. Does that mean that there's less congestion, so it's easier to drive your car to work?
Mm-hmm. The number 2, the increase in number of jobs accessible by driving for equity priority communities. So I can share how I'm interpreting it, but these are measures that came out of the discussion with the group. But the way that I'm interpreting it, and then I see Emily's hand here, is that that this is referring to the flow of traffic so that folks can access jobs. It's specifically looking at equity priority populations. Emily, did you want to?
Yeah, so this, and some folks on this group may have been here back when Jake War a while back. He had done an analysis, and that was part of what the program's analysis was around equity. But it was basically determining how many jobs were accessible by both driving and public transit with a focus on equity priority communities to show how different improvements would make a difference on that. And so jobs were really a proxy for all sorts of services that, folks would need to access in their community. So really it was just as a way to measure how it could improve their access to different essential, needs that they may have, including jobs. And so since we have that analysis was part of the what was studied in the SCIS. And so that will be tracked through that ongoing analysis. And part of that goes into it is, folks that live in the half-mile walk sheds around the transit stations, and that gets factored into it as well, as access to transit increases, so does their access to jobs and other services.
It's a little confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it should be accessible by vehicle or transit.
I think it's meant to capture like the cumulative effect of the different improvements of the project. So driving as well as transit improvements.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vicki, and so we'll note that your recommendation to indicate, and for us to have in mind that when we're thinking about the excess of number of jobs and the transit, that it could be, or can I have you, Vicki, kind of say what it is that you think is kind of the spirit of this that feels right to you?
To me, driving is a single person driving a car and doesn't include transit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does that, okay, thank you, Vicki. No, thanks for those reflections. And I think this is helpful too, as we identify what would be a meaningful data tracking source. I think being really specific and clear about what it is that we're meaning will be important.
I'm going to say thank you, Vicky, for saying that, because I couldn't really understand that either, because you're driving for equity, or the equity comes from the number of people that are taking public transit to get to that job. So that's where I was a little confused too.
Pat, before Sabrina, I see your hand. Pat, do you have any suggestions for how that can be clear?
No, because when I read this, then I thought you were looking at, we'll say Tektronix. What's the accessibility for people to drive there, and how much are we making it accessible for other people who live in other neighborhoods to get there? Or that maybe further away, who would not have the ability to drive, but maybe low income and going to be taking public transportation.
So if I can jump in on this one, and I think, as I recall the conversation earlier, when we were looking at this, the first one is to look at, okay, with the increase in improvements in transit, how many more jobs are accessible? But also now with the improvements with clearing some of the congestion, are we also creating more accessible jobs for folks who have to drive, who may not have accessibility to transit, or it's too far to ride, walk, or roll? So I think this was looking at, okay, are we clearing congestion that can now make it feasible for folks who have to drive to access jobs in this region?
Vicki, are you leaning in to respond?
Yeah, I think I can see where the first one is transit, and then the second one is auto or vehicles. So just clearing that up. But I wasn't sure what driving for equity, what that meant, whether it was in a vehicle or
yeah, so it
because
does
really the
mean
purpose
that,
is to reduce
that
the
you're
number.
driving.
Yeah.
It does mean that you're driving in a vehicle, but you're measuring the equity priority communities and where they live, and the commute and the time it takes them to access job centers.
Right.
So let us work on clarifying that language and the meaning.
Okay, great, thank you. Sabrina, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I said a clarifying question on the timeline for measurement. So for the first one, it seems like it was changed to construction. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I quite understand. So why would we measure that during construction?
So the construction phase will be pretty long, and maybe Greg, I'll look to you to comment on, you know, the work that will be happening during construction and whether it does make sense to look at, you know, as jobs increase during this phase. And just your thoughts on that.
So one of the initiatives that this group brought up was that there's generally issues with construction jobs of folks either having childcare or transportation. So this one was looking at, okay, during the construction phase, can we make these jobs more accessible via transit by creating specialized bus routes to pick up folks and deliver them to the project site. So that's one of the measures that we think will tell us if we're being successful in attracting equity priority community folks to work on the project and to have access via transit. And
Okay.
it probably needs to get clarified for construction and post construction.
Yes.
Yes.
I was gonna
That's-
say, or what do we call those, end user jobs? So like once the project is completed, because I think that was a component of this too. How are people accessing jobs elsewhere, or once the transit line is in place?
Yep.
I guess I also just think about, and I can't remember if we talked about the construction jobs somewhere else in the performance measures, because I do think that there's folks that live within the equity priority areas, but I think we also are talking about, like, as a region, like folks outside of that, the equity priority areas that are BIPOC, that are women, having access to the construction jobs in this on the bridge too. So I guess I don't want to limit. I also know that we have the equity priority areas. Or are we talking about within the project area, or are we talking about populations in both states?
It should be within the program area.
Okay.
And within the region of folks being able to access the construction jobs in the program area, but also being able to access jobs within the region. If I live on far southeast and there are jobs created here in Vancouver, how will folks have access to those jobs?
Okay. So then I think my recommendation would be to take another look at these two to make sure that we're speaking to both. I think here both jobs during construction and after construction.
Yep.
And within the project area, but also that connectivity to the rest jobs from and to the region. Yeah.
Let us take a run at revisiting this language and clarifying for our next meeting.
Sounds great. Thank you. All right, we'll go to the next bucket here. So the next equity objective is community benefits. There's a lot of work that's happening through the community benefits advisory group, and we'll be able to get into a conversation about that work later on in this meeting. But there were three proposed measures, and I'm sorry, there were two proposed measures in what was submitted. And so I'll just start on the one that's on here that was amended. So previously it started with percentage of excess property repurposed or developed for community amenities such as parks, affordable housing, etc. So we removed the percentage of excess at the beginning of this line. And so now I'll read it again just for clarity. Property repurposed or developed for community amenities such as parks, affordable housing, etc. And this would be measured post-construction, so we can identify those. And because it's still not determined what those might be, we still need to determine what the data source for that would be. And the second one that was on here that was removed is total monetary value of community benefits. And since this work is happening with the CBAG and that is ongoing work, we don't want to attribute monetary value to the work that's happening there. But that is something that if it comes up at a later time, we would revisit, but we didn't want to have that part of these performance measures, and need to look at monetary value for community benefits. And what's being identified now will live in different parts of the program as well. So just to be able to be as clear as possible about what we can track, we are focusing on the property that's repurposed or developed for community amenities. Any questions there? All right, the next bucket here, this one has 2 slides. So we split them up into 2 different slides in the same objective, and that is workforce equity and economic opportunity. The first one here, as you can see, these are all kept from the original information that was submitted, or the original recommendation. So no changes here, but if you have any comments or kind of clarifying questions as we continue to develop our thinking around these, and those are welcome. So percentage of construction workforce who are members of equity priority communities, disaggregated by community, and women. The data source for tracking identified as workforce complying tracking system. The next one is retention rates for equity priority communities and women. Similarly, it's using the workforce complying tracking system. The next one, percentage of contract dollars and number of contracts awarded to businesses owned by people of color, people with disabilities, and women. And this would come from contractor data in business diversity tracking systems. In a business diversity tracking system. And the one line that was removed because it's very unique to work that's being developed in a different part of the program, and that is the tribal member employment rates through the TARO office, comparing that to the requirements. So because that is very specialized in terms of who's involved and how that information is being tracked, we removed that so that it's not part of the broader program, but it's very specific to the TARO work that is that will be managed separately. All right, we'll go to the next slide here. Oh, Vicky. Oh, I think you're muted. Oh, almost. Let's see.
Okay.
There you go.
On the second one, I wonder if it's retention and career advancement. And then I guess the other little piece that could fit there, and progression into business ownership.
Yeah, does that seem that addition, does that, to me it sounds like it might be separate, the retention in a particular job or versus advancement. Does it, or do you feel like that would go together?
I think there are some entry-level jobs that may not be the career destination, that people jump into those jobs in order to attain. They want to go into a more skilled trade. that would be more financially beneficial. And I don't know if there's a way of being intentional about that people aren't just pocketed, as often people of color end up being in the entry level but not progressing.
Thank you for saying that, Vicki, because it made me think that you're absolutely right. Depending on the length of the project, people can become foremen and superintendents. There is levels of management that you can do within. This is going to be a 15-year project? Can't remember again.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I've
10
heard
to 15.
10 to 15.
Yes, that's plenty of time that people can move within positions. So like you're saying, I would like to see the disaggregation between the people of color and who are moving into those positions.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. We will, as we're taking notes of comments and recommendations, and as Greg said, we'll bring those back to consider and bring back one more update next month.
Okay.
All right. So this one again builds off of the same bucket as far as the equity objective, and this one we edited the first one to read number of DBEs or small businesses that received supportive services to enable project participation, and giving some specific examples such as training, certification support, capacity building, and technical support. And since we are, this is, will be determined later on as we narrow down just contracting details and what exactly will be required in terms of tracking for folks. So we need some more time to figure out how that information will be collected, but we're trying to be as specific as possible in what we're interested in so that we can keep that in mind as those details get worked out. The next one here, workforce training program or programs funded and or developed, a number of persons trained. The next one are resources provided for workforce participation, such as wraparound services, childcare, and transportation. So previously, this one that I just read said dollars invested in these in workforce participation, but wanting to broaden that to tracking resources more broadly, to be able to get to, just as a small example, a childcare voucher that isn't necessarily dollars, but maybe a program or other resources that can help people access these services. And the next one is a percentage of apprentices that journey out. So this is making me think of the previous conversation, but that is the last one there. Go ahead, Sabrina.
Yeah, I would just say to add to the last one that we the disaggregation by community and gender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And so we'll make note of that. And this last one, we are suggesting that the data source be participation and completion data from apprentice programs. And so making sure that we'll consider to see how we can to consider the demographic information that's being collected through those. All right, the next bucket, decision-making processes. And this one here, the two that are remaining on here are the number of engagement activities directed towards equity priority communities. And then the next one is the number of equity priority community members engaged. So all of this is currently being tracked through our community engagement team. And so it's referring to that data to indicate to collect measures on those. What was removed were community guided bridge naming process, a community guided bridge naming process, and inclusive process to develop a set of meaningful community benefits. These ones are the first one And well, both of them are closely connected to work that's happening through the Community Benefits Advisory Group. And so because those will be kind of worked out there, and we removed those just to be able to since we are in close collaboration with that work, we didn't want to be duplicative. And so they'll be revisited later on. Great. Anyone? I don't see any hands. Okay, Vicky, go ahead.
I don't know. Okay. So an indicator, it may not fit here, but in occupations where women or people of color are seriously underrepresented, which many construction jobs fit in that category, the discrimination complaint or harassment can become an issue. And I think with some of the labor unions, that's been a problem. And the ones that have addressed it well, and in listening to the IBEW, I think they've taken a powerful position on how they handle complaints nationally and the process for doing that. But that is an indicator that over a period of time, if the number of discrimination complaints that are either resolved quickly or are not filed is an indicator of success in some way.
Yeah, is that connected to the workforce equity piece? Okay.
That could be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm gonna we'll move that comment and recommendation forward, Vicky. We'll have conversations about that with the team, and then when we touch back, I'll make sure that that's one of the points that we provide some more thought around, and or a recommendation for how that could be worked out as a measure. But I would love to bring that to the team for their thoughts on what's possible with that. Okay. And then I believe the last objective is avoid further harm. And the two measures here, the first one, reduction in injuries and fatalities in the corridor over time. And that's information that is available through ODOT and WashDOT. So it's collecting that longitudinal data. And then the second one is air quality in the corridor over time, tracked in coordination with local agencies. And to that last one, we replaced change in air quality in the corridor over time to air quality in the corridor over time. So it's not tracking the change in the air quality, but just looking at the quality of, it's not tracking the change. So it's looking at the air quality and tracking that over time. Let's see here if I'm missing anything. Go ahead, Meg.
I don't know if this is something we can add, but I know that there is a lot of individual people or very small community groups that are doing their own air quality tracking because of blank spots in the map, especially around Clark County and the Fourth Plain Corridor, especially. So I wonder if that's something that we can add, not just local agencies, but independently tracked measures. I wonder.
So independently tracked data, is that?
I don't know. I know that there's a lot of smaller community groups that are trying desperately to figure out their heat island situation, and they are lost in the local agencies that don't map their sections of town, which is a problem in and of itself, but it's something that is happening, especially in Clark County. So I wonder how we could speak to that in some way, because their data is just as meaningful as any local agency would gather, and it's community sourced, which, you know, is a point in time in a place. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I
Not
appreciate
sure.
that. And if there's, I think if there are any resources that you can point us to learn more about that, again, that's something that we'll bring back to the team just to see level of awareness and how we can connect, but we might need to loop back with you. Thank you. Yeah. Vicky, go ahead.
The racial disparity of prior projects like I-5 and the convention, well, not convention center, but the displacement issues that they're dealing with now, where the Black community was moved out and other communities. Is that tracked somewhere else, or is there a way of the second one, is there maintaining data on the disparity between racial, ethnic community members displaced by the project?
Yeah, I think that's connected to the second measure that was removed, which is the number of residents and businesses displaced by the project. And Vicky, you're talking to a demographic disparity potentially, or at least looking at the demographics of the impact of that. And I know that the work that's going into right-of-way acquisition is very sensitive, as you know and can imagine. And it's and we're moving forward with that very carefully. I think that this I appreciate the comment. I think we need to have some more conversations internally around what's possible, and also I know that again that work is being handled very, very, very carefully. And the program has acknowledged that, as far as harm that transportation agencies have caused in the past, I mean, that is, the displacement of Black and Brown communities, both locally and nationally, is something that is top of mind for a lot of folks. So I think it's one for us to wrestle with, of like, what is that, what can we do with knowing that? What can we do to understand our local context better? But that's something that, again, we'll need to circle back to.
Okay, I just would hate to see it not show up somewhere.
Mm-hmm. We'll touch base on that one again.
Okay.
Thank you, Vicky. And then for the first line that was removed, again, the percentage of tribal, natural, and cultural resources preserved is information that's very specific to the tribal and cultural preservation program. So we're letting them kind of work out the measures for that for those efforts. Oh, I was wrong. So one more. Physical design. We've got, and I know that this one is pretty sure this was our last one. So the first one is tribal and community history incorporated into the program through art, historical markers, etc. And this one was replaced, but I guess the ask here is, if it's capturing, it was replaced for clarity and specificity, but would love to hear if it's not kind of hitting the mark. So the original read multiple features paying tribute to tribal and community history throughout the project area. And so what we ended up with is an effort to make that more specific. Similarly, the second one was originally, I'll go down to read the original, then I'll read the replacement. Read percentage of public art budgeted, but percentage of public art budget awarded to artists from equity priority communities, and that was replaced by opportunities for the inclusion of public art created by and representing equity priority communities. I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. And so this one, in terms of work that's ongoing with the Community Benefits Advisory Group, there is some overlap here, as well as us looking at work that will be coming out of the program design specifically. And so, you know, I know that in thinking about some of this work as Venn diagrams, I think some of the other buckets of some of the other measures that were proposed had such a big overlap with the Community Benefits Advisory Group. And they're going through an iterative process to refine. And then these ones here, even though they are connected to CBAG and program design, they're distinct enough where we didn't want to remove them. So that is kind of the thinking there, but please chime in if there's anything that feels like it needs further clarification. Soko?
This is Soko. You know, looking at the replacement language and the new language, would it, or I guess, would it be important to include not only the public art, but the artists themselves with the percentage of, or the number of artists who come from the community? I don't know if that made sense. I can try to rephrase it if it didn't.
Yeah, so what I see and what we do have in the measures, the opportunities for the inclusion of public art created by and representing equity priority communities. That one I see compared to what the original was, is that it includes those that are created by directly the folks themselves, and expanding it to potentially organizations or other folks who serve equity priority communities but aren't necessarily, don't identify with one of those groups themselves. So it's a little broader. Does it feel important to narrow it again, or does broader feel like that works?
I'm still trying to get my head around both the construction phase of the timeline measurement and then the post-construction and the opportunities for post-construction when communities and the artists that could come from those communities are presented the opportunity to design or place markers or provide art that could be installed along the corridor of the project zone or into the future where you could invite folks in. How would we be able to differentiate the two between what needs to happen during construction and post-construction as those projects come along?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, and I think we'll again we'll make note of it, and I think it's a great idea to revisit kind of some of these points that are being brought up. We'll have some more conversations internally, and then we'll address those next time.
Second one, but I think they should be both.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Pat.
Well, no, I like the artists having a public art budget for artists from all of the equity areas going forward.
Mm-hmm.
But and I like both just paying a tribute to the community history because there's a lot of community that changed from that area. So I'm just talking out loud. Sorry. I enjoy the conversation.
Thank you. Okay, great. Well, we're right at time. We've had great conversation. So I'll just read these out again, and if there's anything, any lingering thoughts, would love to get those from you all. So initial reactions, does it feel like we are hitting the mark? I know that there's some conversations to loop back to, but overall, does it feel like we're moving forward positively? And if there's any other data sources that come to mind, what would you recommend we consider? I'll take these down here. Go ahead, Meg.
So it seems like we've gotten away from discussion of money directly to a lot of things and just going towards opportunities instead of money. A lot of the language that was taken out has taken out a lot of the, dollars to specific things. Was that meaningful, intentional in that way? Just because it's a little broader?
So it was intentional, because as you start identifying specific dollars, they become targets. If there's reductions, if you have concepts and you keep the concept but don't have dollars attached to it, you can find the dollars, but folks will see it as a target and will seek to eliminate some of these things. So that is one of the reasons why we try to stray away from identifying specific dollar amounts for each of these things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Greg, for being here to be responsive. I know that these are really being seriously considered by you and members of the leadership. And we just want to make sure that as we kind of pave the pathway here for how we're operationalizing, where we're measuring, that it's really grounded in something that's feasible and also meaningful. So it's just trying to strike that balance. And so thank you to EAG members for helping us figure that out. So we of course take notes in our conversations. I'm gonna sit with the feedback, pull out some threads, pull out the questions that we still need to get a response for you all to. We'll spend some time internally with the team with those, and then next time we'll loop back around and then kind of get your okay for us to take it to the next step. So thank you all for your contributions. I really appreciate it.
I learn something every time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Fabiola. I think now we're moving to Emily and a presentation and feedback to CBAG recommendations for equity objectives.
All right, well, thank you. So I'll do a little bit of framing before we, oh, sorry, I realized I was invisible there. I'll do a little bit of framing before we go through these and some reminders. So the last time we came to you all, we brought the first half of what we are calling Tranche 2. And so for those of you who aren't living in the weeds of community benefits with me every day, we have organized our community benefits list from strictly categories to what we're calling tranches. And shout out to Shannon for bringing back some COVID terms there. So the way that we're thinking about this is there are certain deadlines that we want to make sure we're able to hit for the program, so that certain benefits that maybe need to be included in the final the final EIS and some other key decisions that we're able to get those in front of leadership and in front of the teams to advance those so that they can be incorporated in these different moving pieces here. And so we have batched our recommendations in these groups or tranches. And so we came the last time with you all to share the first half of Tranche 2, which is the batch that we're trying to hit this deadline to possibly be included in the final EIS. The first half of that was in our avoid further harm category. And so today I'm going to bring you the second half, which is in our mobility and accessibility category. So if we can move to the next slide. And I don't expect everybody to keep all of this straight. So if you have questions for me after we kind of go through, I'm more than happy to take them. So as a reminder, our community benefits categories were shaped by our equity objectives that came from our equity framework that all of you worked really hard on informing and developing. And so we can move to the next slide. All right. And so these that I will take you through are what we just had our meeting last week with the Community Benefits Advisory Group. They did a little bit final refinement, and then they moved through their modified consensus decision-making for these. And so with that, I will say that since we weren't able to get them in front of you before that decision-making process, if there's anything, substantive or just, really, really key from your feedback here that is going to change, maybe the language or really the idea behind any of these, we're going to share that out with Community Benefits Advisory Group members. So just want to make sure that you all know that your feedback will be incorporated. All right, so I will take us through. Our first was to conduct a comparative analysis of program areas to optimize traffic flow and accessibility. Next was design team to consider providing adequate shelter for all weather conditions at transit stations, including rain, wind, and heat. Special consideration should be made for the unique needs of the elevated transit station. Consider safety when determining locations for public restrooms near transit stations. And next, design team to consider incorporation of drought-resistant naturalized landscaping at public transit locations. And I'll pause here just to give folks a second to digest and see if there's any initial thoughts here. Now, some of what we heard from you all last time was that there was really a desire for us, as we're thinking through these, to think about the outcomes that we want to see from these, right? And so some here that we've identified are that, many of these are kind of overlap with design, right? And so some of the outcomes that we'll see is the incorporation or consideration of these as decisions are made in the design refinement process. And ultimately, we see the potential for the design team to come back to this group or other advisory groups and really explain some of these decisions and how these pieces showed up there. And I'll pause just for a second before I move on to the next. Go ahead, Meg.
Hi, this is Meg. For the last piece, the design team to consider incorporation of drought-resistant naturalized landscaping at public transit locations, can we have some kind of language around maybe having permeable surfaces to make it safer for most modes of transit to get around? The less standing water that we have, it's better for everybody. So it's not really drought resistant when talking about landscaping, but I would love to see something like that that considers excess water as well as the reduction of water in those spaces.
Thanks, Meg. That's really helpful. And, we have another benefit that kind of speaks to something similar around, the naturalized plants and things like that. So I think that that's a piece that we can add into just some more detail to tease out. But I like that distinction of, looking at it both ways, drought and also excess. So appreciate that. Any other thoughts before I move through? And I just wanted to give you all a second to kind of digest these. I know they're a little bit dense, so before I move to the next. All right, if we could go ahead and move. Okay, so our next group here, consider maintenance, safety, active management, and future proofing and the design aspects of the multi-use paths throughout the program area. Develop robust trail systems that pass federal requirements, leveraging creative solutions to increase functionality and community value and responsive to the community's needs and input. Incorporate innovative solutions to exceed ADA requirements, enhancing accessibility and mobility thoughtfully. Expand the bridge's bike and pedestrian paths and install barriers to separate them from vehicular traffic, enhancing both safety and noise reduction. And again, on these, I think a lot of this impact piece is what we're going to see of, how are these considerations made when design decisions are made? And, we're really early on in the design process, but as that, develops further, how we're kind of seeing these different pieces incorporated there. I'll pause here just to see if folks have any clarifying questions. All right, we'll move on to the next. Okay, so our prompt that we wanted to bring back from the last time was, do you feel like these recommendations are in line with the EAG equity framework principles from your perspective? And Vicky, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would love it if maybe as somebody who sits on, the Community Benefits Advisory Group and you're part of these decision-making conversations, if you have any thoughts you want to kind of kick us off with in discussion here.
Oh my goodness. Clearly, it's important that these two groups work together because the discussions can be very different and the expertise can be very different in terms of the Community Benefits Committee includes a number of community organizations and jurisdictions that have great responsibility for transit and highway improvement and infrastructure. So, it's been an interesting process from my standpoint to go through and to contribute, but also to hear the other side. So I appreciate that the staff is able to clarify a lot of this that maybe gets clarified in the other committee, but doesn't carry over unless we hear it from the staff or other representatives that are involved in both.
Thanks, Vicki. That's really helpful. And that made me think of something in that, since I have a little bit shorter of a time with you all versus being in the weeds with it and really, digging through the review and refinement of all this with the Community Benefits Advisory Group, there's a little bit of context that maybe can get lost. And one thing I think is great to uplift is that a number of the items on this list are either, already part of the program as far as, the modified LPA, what's being studied in the SEIS, or it's, it's along those same lines and it's figuring out, do we want to go beyond that? And so I just want to note that some of these are standard practice and some of it is where the program is trying to exceed standard practice, like the ADA, for example. And so I just want to uplift that maybe might not, get the light shown on it as much in this group, but that, when we're digging in the weeds on it in CBAG, we're able to uplift.
I would say, I think at the end where you were just talking about the additional artwork for people once the bridge gets going, once the bridge is done, I think that's an amazing piece because I think we can leave people out from the very beginning. I learned a lot about all of the different nationalities that were, like I'm going to say, Vicki, I did not know that there was a camp in that area prior to. I just knew about the African-American community that was there in the whole Vanport issue. So I think there's a lot of rich history and the fact that we're going to go all out to make sure that people who are disabled can actually access. I think that is just really going to be huge.
Thank you so much. Sabrina?
Yeah.
I have a list. So I can maybe do a few and then come back.
Sure.
If that's okay. So, and one, I just want to appreciate you, Vicki, for being on both of these committees and the tremendous amount of work that requires. So thank you. And like all the thoughtfulness that has gone into this is just very evident. So wanted to appreciate that. I think just like overall, one of the comments, I think relating back to what you said at the beginning, Emily, about kind of what is the outcome we want to see from each of these strategies, just coming back to that again and really thinking about how do we want community to experience the benefit, and then making sure that those strategies are actually going to help us get there. I think that for the, so that's just kind of an overarching recommendation. I want to encourage the committee to continue to think through. On the comparative analysis of the program areas to optimize traffic flow and accessibility, I was really curious kind of how the committee was thinking about this one and putting traffic flow and accessibility together. I think, you know, we can, which I know we don't want to be, you know, you can do one or the other. And there's like are we leading with accessibility and wanting to make sure that pedestrians are able to move through the space, or are we prioritizing traffic flow? It's kind of like, which one are we leading with, and ensuring that, you know, I don't quite fully understand what the analysis is going to get to, but I do think about, you know, in terms of our equity framework, that really leading with the accessibility component seems important to me. The other one that I will just lift up to in those terms is the call out for innovative solutions that exceed ADA requirements. And I'm curious whether like the committee has thought about like how would they like to see that done in order to identify those innovative strategies, and for there to be some structures that are ensuring that's like built into the process and the development of the project. Are there particular communities we want to make sure that are a part of that? Are there other, you know, parts of the country where we've seen innovative solutions that we can point to, and is it an example that we'd like to see explored here? I'm going to pause there and then I'll come back around.
So if I can tackle your first question,
yeah,
regarding what's being prioritized, we know that once again the freight movement and congestion on the freeway have been identified as key purpose and need elements of this project. But we also know that we're also impacting a number of local streets, bike paths, and facilities that are multimodal. So I think we're trying to accomplish both things.
Sure.
to get traffic moving in an appropriate manner on the appropriate system. We're not prioritizing cars on the local roadways. We know that there's going to be a lot of pedestrian and foot traffic, bike traffic. So we're trying to strike that balance and do things that are on the non-freeway portion of this project that will address those issues and make sure that that they feel safe when they're using the facilities. So I think we can try and accomplish both things, but the statements are meant for different parts of the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and great. And if I can chime in there too, I know I definitely appreciate that piece around what are we prioritizing. And from the context of the discussions at CBAG, it was more of them listing, what different aspects they wanted to be part of the comparative analysis rather than it being like a statement of which one to prioritize over the other. But the other thing I think to note that's kind of helpful is that this analysis is part of what was done in the SCIS review. So it's some of that comparative analysis of looking at, existing traffic conditions, future traffic conditions, and that, the no build versus modified LPA, that technical piece there. So a lot of that analysis already has been done.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the ADA piece, really appreciate that as well. And there definitely have been kind of broader pieces and ideas around, using universal design and some of those, other strategies. And the group also gets really specific in some other areas too of, making sure that, the weighing a spiral ramp versus a longer extended one. And then are we making sure that, if there's elevators, there's enough room for folks who need it for maybe a disability versus somebody who has a bike, and that everybody has space there. Or also, what about ice conditions on a ramp? Is it going to be covered? So all these different pieces, folks really get in the details about that. And they've also really talked about some interesting things around using different materials and how does it affect noise? And for folks maybe who have limited vision, and if it has an audio effect and echoes and things like that. So all these different pieces they're really interested in, and giving really detailed pieces and also wider pieces.
Great.
June's hand was up.
Hey y'all, I think my question is kind of out of scope around polling, so maybe I'll just ask it if we have time then. I guess I was just looking at these recommendations. Will sort of the tolling program impact them at all? I guess I just don't know, and I wonder if there's some sort of interaction between the type of considerations being put out there, the recommendations, and the type of tolling program that's used on the bridge.
So one of the things we know, June, is that tolling, the priority for tolling on this program is to help pay for the bridge itself. But we also know that there are some secondary benefits to lessen congestion, to try and push some of the trips of choice to more non-congested times of the day during non-peak hours. So we think that has an overall beneficial effect on air quality, on safety issues, and congestion. But yeah, the tolling is, the primary goal is to actually raise dollars to help pay for the construction. But there are some side benefits that we see. Hopefully that answered your question, but feel free to follow up.
And I can add on that as well. In one of our future, this is tranche 2. We'll be digging into tranche 3 in our next meeting with the CBAG. And then after that, we'll have our last one, tranche 4, and that'll be over the first few months of the next year. And we expect that, there's going to be a little bit of a discussion around tolling there. There's, a benefit that folks have been considering. So that will be part of future conversations.
All right, Emily, are you complete?
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate the conversation. We always uplift the feedback we hear from all of you to CBAG, and this is really helpful in getting us to help look at things through different angles and lenses. So appreciate all of you.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's move to public comment. EAG comment instructions through Zoom. Please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR EAG meeting webpage. Commentators will be allowed to turn on their webcams, but will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. By phone, dial 253-215-8782, meeting ID 986-0940, 5983, passcode 701376. Dial *9 to raise your hand, dial *6 to unmute yourself. The facilitator will call on participants to provide comment. Please provide your name and affiliation. Commentators will be given 2 minutes to speak. As you come online, please turn down the YouTube on your computer so that you're not hearing the double echo. Next slide. EAG comment instructions. Please see interstatebridge.org/draft SEIS for the ways to submit official public comment on the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. To submit comment after the meeting, fill out the comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. Next slide. Okay, so we have public comment. We have someone, I think Chris Smith. Hi, Chris. I think you're here for public comment.
Yeah, let me just mute the YouTube.
Great.
Thank you. Chris Smith with the Just Crossing Alliance. And I want... yes, sorry, the YouTube chimed in again. Let me start again. Chris Smith, Just Crossing Alliance. And I want to alert the group to an issue with the health analysis being conducted for the project. The health analysis was a condition of approval imposed by Metro Council when they signed off on the modified locally preferred alternative. IBR commissioned the Washington State Health Department to lead a team to conduct the health analysis, and the intent was it would be filed as a public comment on the EIS. Well, we have about 4 hours left in the EIS comment period, and the Washington State Health Department team has told us they won't publish the health analysis until later this week. So the public has not had an opportunity to be informed by the health analysis in making their comments on the EIS. We think that's a process failure. The suggestion we have made to the project in our own comment is that once the health analysis is released, there should be a 14-day supplemental comment period to allow the public to comment on what they learned in the health analysis and how that impacts the project. I would hope in the name of equity, your group would join us in recommending that, that solution to this process failure. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Chris. Do we have another public comment?
No other public comments at this time.
Okay. All right. Emily?
Yeah, if we have a quick second, Sabrina, I know you had said you had a list. So if there were other things that you wanted to share with us, please feel free to send me or anyone else on the team an email if you'd like, and then we'll make sure that we get it and we can incorporate that.
Thank you. All right, so Moving to our last slide. We have our poll, and our next meeting is December 16th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And 3 takeaways from our time today. If we can take down the slides and have our 3 takeaways from today. Pat, what you got?
No, I'm just going to say Vicky's amazing at all of the things that she brought up and looking at the workforce side and looking at the community. So I'm happy to be on this team. I think today was an awesome meeting. It was good to just kind of get caught up and refreshed on a lot of things that we've been talking about. So I wrote that it was an awesome meeting today. I was refreshed and learned a lot. Alexa, turn off. Sorry.
All right, one more.
Well, I would like to say that we need, my aha was that when you look at this bridge will take 10 to 15 years to complete, that we really need to consider innovation, because we could be halfway through this bridge and we'll have flying cars or innovations that we never anticipated before. So in some of the verbiage, we need to be open to what the future may bring, because a car may not be a car, it may be some variation of a car that we need to consider. And so, I mean, that's just my thought, to write some of those goals in a way that anticipates change.
Great. All right. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here, and we will see you in December. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Mhm.